Welcome to the session of literary criticism, where we would be doing The Function of Criticism by T.S. Eliot. The essay Tradition and the Individual Talent was published in 1919. Eliot's opinions in this essay were challenged by Middleton Murray in his essay Romanticism and the Tradition. In order to emphasize his point of view and challenge Murray's claims, Eliot wrote The Function of Criticism. The essay is divided into 4 parts. In the first part of the essay, Eliot describes his opinion on literary tradition as expressed in the essay Tradition and the Individual Talent. In the second part, Eliot gives a brief account of Murray's argument. In the third part of the essay, Eliot expresses the reasons for disagreement with Murray and dismisses the arguments made. The concluding part of the essay examines the nature and function of criticism as envisaged by Eliot. Let us now move on to part 1, where Eliot deals with the sense of tradition. Eliot refers to the notion of tradition as expressed in Tradition and the Individual Talent because of its relevance to the present essay. Eliot had mentioned that there was a close relation between the present and the past in the history of English literature. The literature of Europe from Homer down to the present day is a part of a single literary tradition, and it is in relation to this tradition that the individual writers and the individual works of art gain their importance. Literary tradition is the outside authority to which an artist must be committed. He must continually sacrifice himself to this literary tradition to gain meaning and significance. What does Eliot have to say about conformity of artists? Artists of all periods, says Eliot, form a community, and an artist in the present must be able to adhere to his sense of oneness. An artist must realize that artists of all times are united together by a common cause. An artist who does not possess this sensibility asserts his individuality because he believes his merit lies in the difference and not in the likeness with others. A true artist is one who tries to conform to tradition. The true artist can, I quote him, afford to collaborate, to exchange, to contribute, unquote. Eliot moves on to define criticism and tells us about the function of criticism. He defines criticism as, I quote, the commentation and exposition of works of art by means of written words, unquote. In the essay, The Frontiers of Criticism, he further explains the term of criticism to be the promotion of understanding and enjoyment of literature. Criticism, says Eliot, cannot be reduced to an autotelic activity because criticism always says about something. Critics like Matthew Arnold recognize the moral, religious and cultural functions of art, but Eliot is against such roles being assigned to art. According to Eliot, criticism has only a definite aim, and that is elucidation of works of art and the correction of taste. When the artist becomes aware of the nature of criticism, the critic's function becomes clear. If the end of criticism is well defined, it should be easy to determine whether a critic has performed his function well or otherwise. To ascertain whether a critic has performed his task well or not is not an easy task, because the difficulty arises when critics do not discipline their personal prejudices and whims. Critics express extreme views and strongly assert their individuality. This is so because they owe their livelihood to such differences and oddities. The result is that criticism has become like a Sunday park full of orators competing with each other to attract a large audience. Such critics are worthless and do not have any value or significance. There are other critics who do not try to ascertain themselves, and it is on the basis of their works that Eliot establishes the aims and methods of criticism. We now move on to part 2 of the essay, where Eliot explains Murray's views. Eliot explains Murray's views on classicism and romanticism. There are critics who view classicism and romanticism to be similar. Murray, however, makes a clear distinction between the two and says that one cannot be a classic and a romantic at the same time. Eliot agrees with Murray on this point, but disagrees with Murray's comment that the genius of the French is classic and that of the English is romantic. Murray further relates Catholicism in religion with classicism in literature because both believe in tradition, discipline and obedience to an authority outside. On the contrary, Romanticism, Protestantism and social liberalism are related, for they have faith in the inner voice of the individual and do not obey any outside authority, rules and traditions. Eliot disagrees with these views. In his opinion, the difference between classicism and romanticism is, I quote, "The difference between the complete and the fragmentary, the adult and the immature, the orderly and chaotic," unquote. The concept of inner voice is disagreeable to Eliot because it is like doing what one likes. It is a sign of indiscipline leading to vanity, fear and lust. Eliot opposes Murray's notion that the English are essentially romantics who are humorous and nonconformists, while the French are naturally classical in temperament. In the next part, Eliot expresses his opposition of Murray's views. He ridicules Murray's views regarding inner voice and insists that those who believe in the inner voice are inconsistent and do not follow any principles. Eliot calls the belief in the inner voice as wiggery. For those who believe in the inner voice, criticism is of no value at all, because the function of criticism is to discover some common principles to achieve perfection in art. They do not care for perfection in art. To quote Eliot, criticism's task is to find some common principles. Conformity is something petty to those who have this inner voice. They are strongly in favor of subjectivism, and the result would be chaos. Obedience to the laws of art and tradition represent the accumulated wisdom and experiences of ages. And in part 4 of the essay, he distinguishes between two terms, critical and creative. He comments on these two terms, critical and creative, because he derides Matthew Arnold for making a vague distinction between the two terms. Eliot says that the larger part of the labor of an author in composing his work is critical labor, the labor of shifting, combining, constructing, expunging, correcting, testing. These are the terms used by Eliot. He explains that criticism of one's own work is the most vital and the highest kind of criticism. Eliot calls such criticism workshop criticism. In the essay, The Frontiers of Criticism, Eliot mentions that the best of his own criticism, I quote him, consists of essay on poetic dramatists who had influenced me. It is a byproduct of my private poetry, or a prolongation of the thinking that went into the formation of my own verse, unquote. A poet who knows about the mysteries of the creative process from personal experience is in a better position to write about this process than those who do not know the process or do not have the knowledge of it. Eliot goes to the extent of saying that some creative writers are superior to others only because of their superior critical faculty. The greatest artist is an unconscious artist. He mocks critics who do not consider the critical labor of the artists. He comments that those who rely on the inner voice or inspiration do not conform to tradition and in this way try to make their works faultless. It would be erroneous to separate both critical and creative activities. A large part of creation is in reality criticism. Critical writing, however, cannot be creative. There cannot be creative criticism. Creative criticism is neither criticism nor creation because there is a difference between the processes of creation and criticism. The process of creation of a work of art is autotelic, which does not have any conscious objective. Criticism, on the other hand, comments and elucidates works of art. Creation and criticism cannot be combined into one. The critical activity finds its completion when it is fused with creation and the labor of the artist. In the words of Eliot, I quote him again, "The critical activity finds its highest, its truest fulfillment in a kind of union with creation in the labor of the artist." Unquote. With this said, Eliot goes on to elaborate the qualifications of a critic. An ideal critic must have a heightened sense of fact. The sense of fact is a rare gift that develops slowly and gradually. Workshop criticism deals with facts he can understand. Eliot praises critics who conduct workshop criticism. Most criticism interprets an author and his work. However, the critic's views are often misleading because of the views of the critic that interfere with the work. Eliot does not prefer impressionistic criticism because it would offer no insight into the work. A true critic knows the facts about a work of art, its conditions, its setting and its genesis, and puts the facts across to readers in a simple manner. The word fact refers to the various aspects of a work of art, principally the technical aspects of a work of art. A good critic is objective as his judgments are based on facts. He is guided by tradition and not his inner voice. He does not indulge in mere expression of opinion or fancy. With this, he moves on to tell us about the tools of a critic. Eliot regards two important tools, namely comparison and analysis. The critic must use them with care and intelligence. Comparison and analysis are possible only when the critic is aware of the facts about the works which are to be compared and analyzed. He must be informed about the technical elements of a work like its structure, content and theme. The critic should not waste his time hunting for irrelevant facts. However, the need for comparison and analysis, even when used injudicially, is preferable to interpretation in the conventional sense. Impressionistic criticism practiced by Coleridge and Goethe is always misleading. The function of criticism is to elucidate taste or, as Eliot mentions, to promote enjoyment and understanding of literature. Facts, however trivial they appear, cannot corrupt taste, but they can gratify it. Critics like Goethe and Coleridge, who supply opinion or fancy, are the real corrupters. Eliot warns against slavish adherence to gather facts and bother about trivialities as the laundry bills of Shakespeare. Such fact-finding is not criticism. He is against the vicious taste for reading about works of art rather than concentrating on the works of art. Eliot moves on to emphasize on facts, and he says that his emphasis on facts is related to the views on the new critics like F.R. Lewis and I.A. Richards and their critical methods. He comments on textual criticism, but he is against the lemon squeezer school of critics who try to squeeze meaning out of words. A critic should concentrate on the text, make comparisons and conduct analysis, but never give importance to trivialities. Eliot is against impressionistic criticism, but he does not expound any theories or lay down any rules and principles. Impressionistic criticism, according to him, is erratic. He also says that adherence to rigid theories hampers the critic and curtails his freedom. To conclude, Eliot says that the critic should be guided by facts alone. He should approach a work of art with a free mind. The critic must not be prejudiced by any theories or preconceived notions about a work of art. This would enable him to remain objective and impersonal. It is in this way that criticism approximates to objectivity of the scientific processes. Criticism becomes a cooperative activity when a critic of the present cooperates with critics of the previous ages in the common pursuit of truth. Such truths are provisional, for the truth of one age would be modified and corrected by truth formulated by the coming ages. Eliot is different from all other English critics in being objective and scientific in his pronouncements. He hides his individuality and originality. He is like a scientist working with an open mind and cooperating with others for the realization of truth, which he understands is provisional. Let us now have a short summary of what we have done so far. Eliot mentions that Murray provides an example of the difference between the outside authority of classicism and the inner voice of romanticism. For Eliot, the term inner voice is an excuse for doing as one likes. He places Arnold among those who value tradition and the accumulated wisdom of time. Eliot is of the view that Arnold distinguishes between the terms creative and critical closely, and in doing so, he ignores the importance of criticism in creativity. Eliot says that a greater part of work of the author is critical labor. A critic must provide a useful explanation of the work of art with the important tools of comparison and analysis to help the reader understand it without prejudice. By following this method, Eliot writes that there is the possibility of arriving at something outside of ourselves which could conditionally be called truth. All this being said, we have exercises for you to answer so that you would know something more about what Eliot intended to say in this particular essay. Till we meet next time with further essays, thank you.